Welcome to yet another episode of the Stokvels Show. This week we will be discussing lending, and this is one of the areas in which most Stokvels do get involved, either lending amongst members or lending to people who know their members. In studio today we've got special guests. We've got Miss Lindy Matabuche, who's from the Smarter Ladies Club. We've got Mambusi Skenjana from the Stokvel Academy, and as usual we've got Mr. Andile Mazwai from Nasasa. Or shall we use your hashtag?
Hashtag Sonke.
Hashtag Sonke. Welcome, ladies. Now, this week we're talking about lending money. And before we go into the topic, maybe let's hear the legal side. How does it all work in terms of microlending?
The legal side is you cannot lend money to people unless you are authorized to do so. You must be registered with the FSB, or you must be registered with the Reserve Bank. Because it's a normal thing for our Stokvel to lend money out, Tina Zina Sasa, we went to the Reserve Bank to say you cannot expect each and every group to get a license so that it can lend money to the members. And the Reserve Bank agreed and then said, as long as a group is a member of INASASA, they will be exempt from that.
Okay.
So a group is now able to collect money from its members, and it can also lend out money without transgressing the Banks Act for as long as it's a member of INASASA. In INASASA, we say there's no membership fee, there's no registration fee, so we're not making it difficult for Abantu to become members of INASASA.
So Stokvels are the only entities that are allowed to do microlending outside the Banks Act. Now, Mam Lindy, how do you do it in your group? What are the interest rates, and can I come and borrow some money?
I like the way you say interest rates. What we do at Smarter Ladies Stokvels, we actually lend our members and sub-members at a 20% interest.
Okay.
And what normally happens is that you have a contribution, a monthly contribution, and that monthly contribution is then converted from contribution, eba loan, the same money. And then when you bring it, the following month, you bring it with an interest.
And then what happens at the end of the year?
At the end of the year, you'll have, because our Stokvels Arona, it's multi-purpose. So we've got groceries, we've got hampers, we've got a dividend. Because moya rona re believe gore tšhelete ya rona ya gola. And high hola, we are able to reka grocery engata, we are able to buy meat hamper engata, and hape go ba le tšhelete hape e salang e leng gore re a sheba re okay re ntse tšhelete e kana go setse tšhelete e kana, we are re a share kaofela ga rona, but then ha re share equal because ha ra contributor equal kaofela ga rona.
Okay. Now, Mambusi, do you encounter a lot of lending amongst our Stokvels which pass through the doors at the Stokvel Academy?
All the time, yeah, be it Tsanini, Kiani, Kwalanga, Kwamashu, you know, this formula, you know, it's quite common among Stokvels. I must say it still boggles my mind, you know, but it works for Stokvels. It's just, I mean, it's a group that members know each other, you know, so I would want to believe that there is that safety net in the fact that bayazana bonango kwabo. Usually it starts again with the whole idea, original idea, yes, Stokvel is an idea, sifuna ukuthenga ikrosa, we want to do this, but they actually call it fundraising because at the end of the day, part of that interest, it goes back into the kitty that they share at the end of the year.
Now, Andile, from a former investment banker, does this make sense? I mean, I'm getting a better return from a Stokvel than I can get from most financial products just by on-lending that money in a Stokvel.
It makes perfect sense. The job of a bank is to lend money. It must establish two things. Loan to that I'm giving money to, can that person pay me back? Number two, does that person intend to pay me back? Now think what a bank must do to know the answer to that question. It must get your payslip, it must get your credit record, it must get this, it must get that, and it must get that. And even then, it's not certain that when you're actually a person of good standing. And the bank can be wrong. It'll lend money to If one second, Lamtu doesn't pay it back. They're driving a fancy car, but they're not paying. In a Stokvel, you know the answer to those questions. Niyazana. You know, but he never pays. You know that in a Stokvel. So you're not going to lend imali to Mazwai because you know him. That allows a Stokvel to have a very good credit record. Its book should not be contaminated. We've done an example, a pilot study as Inas has, and it shows the fact that when Abantu know each other in a group, they can safely lend money and get that money back without that risk. Therefore, the return is going to be higher. The problem only comes when you start giving money to Abantu that you don't know. Then you start to get into problems.
Now, Mambusi, obviously, Babandile was talking about lending, interest rates. There's numbers involved, and we know that a lot of people are not comfortable with numbers. Are numbers some of the training which you offer people who you or groups you encounter?
Yes, we do, depending on the group. I mean, we get different groups that come through our academy for different, they do different things. But if it is that type of a Stokvel, then we will facilitate and ensure that they get information that is relevant to them. Because what we've discovered is not only about this interest calculation, even a bank statement, they've got issues in that some still want the old book where you would get handwritten. They say, this statement is confuser. And you and I, we may think it's just normal, to go through that bank statement. So education is very important, even on the minute things that some of us take for granted.
Now, Mamlede, yes, we're talking numbers, but I think it's also very important to talk to some of our Stokvel viewers, because e-bank statement has a lot of information. Besides the money you lent out and the money which came back, the bank charges. Do Stokvel take into account these things, and how do you prepare and educate each other on the intricacies of money?
Yeah, first and foremost, I think, as Mambusi said, financial education is important. So as you coach them, you make sure that they understand what is compounded, but in a very practical way. You have to actually show them the 3 dishes to say, this is interest and this is whatever. In that way, adults are able to learn much quicker than when you just show them the statement.
Okay, now just do it quickly for our viewers. What is interest? So that someone who's been confused, because unfortunately we have viewers who are seeing you compound in interest.
Exactly. Ha re bua ka interest, re bua ka tswalo. Tšhelete ya hao ya tswala. Re bua gore tšhelete ha e tswa, ha e tswe for free. Tšhelete e ntsha e nngwe. So for us, go reetse tšhelete ke gore re nke tšhelete ya rona re e sebedise or re fe o mongwe wa tla re fang yona ka tswalo. So interest e ra gore tšhelete ya rona ya hola. And it's important gore di Stokvel di tsebe gore e hola jwang, so that le bona ha ba lo botsa ba bang ba utlwisa gore ha se mo eleng gore fela ba tšhelete ya bona re beya somewhere ko tlasa terase e be e gola, because ba bang ba nagana gore e ba jwalo re enka re ba ko bank. Rona ya rona ha e dule ko bank, because re believe gore rona ka rona re di bank, since well re na le trust ya gore tla e gotisa re tlo fa yona wa e sebedisa in the right way, wa e gotisa hape ka 20%. For them e ba thusa le go etsa gore ba ske ba tlola ba ntse ba ya ko mashonise bona ka bo bona, they have become independent because tšhelete ya bona ya hola and ba e bona gore e hola jwang.
Now, we've had a brief explanation of how all the interest works. Now, in terms of NASASA and your responsibility, you spoke about e-reserve bank and all these important things at the beginning. What do you have to do to the bank about interest and reporting?
Our members have really got 2 problems when it comes to the thing of banks. One is bank charges. Abantu don't understand them, or they've got the wrong product. With my say that what you need is a saving account, but then you open a transaction account, and you're getting charged for all sorts of things. So that's one important thing. The other one which we've learned from our members is they don't understand why they don't qualify for loans at the bank. And there was one particular individual who said, he's a treasurer of a group. They have 187,000 in the bank as a group. He also happens to be a businessman with a small business like us. He wanted a loan for that business. And the bank says, no. We cannot help you. But he says, but Mina, I'm the same one who belongs to this group. Surely this thing must help when I want to borrow money. And he was unable to do that. As in SASSA, we just ran a pilot study to answer a simple question, which we believe a good saver makes a good borrower. If you're good at saving and you've got that discipline, surely you are good at being able to pay back your money. And we're able to do something with our cell phone contracts, where Abantu didn't qualify for a cell phone contract. We then said, if your group has got discipline, your group is disciplined, you know that everybody's contributing every month. If you believe that, then you can believe that these members will also pay a contract every month. And the benefit here contract is that you pay much less. You get a free phone, you pay much less in airtime. So instead of spending 100 Rand a month on prepaid, you can maybe spend 60, 70 on a contract and get the same benefit. And we went and we found members who as individuals did not qualify. They were blacklisted and this and that. We asked the group, is this member blacklisted in this group? But yeah, I know, not in this group. Then we said, fine. And we did the experiment and we proved that good savers make good borrowers.
So indeed, Stokvel members make good borrowers, even if in the past they've been bad as individuals. Stay tuned and we'll be back after the break. Welcome back to the Stokvels show. Today we're discussing lending and micro-lending in the context of Stokvel. Now, Mambusi, we were talking before that the beauty of Stokvel lending is that, one, they lend to people they know. So the risk is very low. But what are some of the risks which do come up now and again?
The risks that come up, I mean, it's simple things. Someone loses uphelelwa umsebenzi, you know. Those are the realities that a person is no longer able to, you know, to pay back loan yakhe. If bekungena upfront safety net yokuthi in the event of that person losing, you know, it's a question of a group waiting and hope ukuthi the day izinto zilunga uzakhona ukuyibhatala imali, you know, because not all Stokvels work in a formula that says we'll only give you loan 5,000 provided there's 4,000 rands in the kitty, you know. It goes back to that thing here, trust. Niyamboleka because niyamthemba, niyamazi. You know, some Stokvels, they don't even work on the interest. For example, on a personal level, one of the Stokvels that I belong to, we just friends with sisters. If you know, cash flow kind of thing, we give a loan, not even interest, you know. But because we've been together for so many years, it's an interest-free loan siyancedana, and we hope we will always be together with that trust. But Abantu, unfortunately, I know of Stokvels, you know, for example, in Cape Town, where people go to an extent by pisana because they came and repossessed TV omnye because agasapatali. So we should not sweep these things under the carpet. Much as this internal loaning thing is okay, it's good, there are situations where it can get very nasty and ugly.
Now, she's talking about that side. It's important that we do discuss that. What happens, though, in terms of, if I do lose my job, am I also going to be thrown out of the group?
Not really. As I say, this is about compassion. This is about, you know, as Mamusi mentioned, it's a safety net. And it sort of supports Wena, not just Wena as a member, but we're looking at the impact that happens more family in your house. So what we normally do, we say, we'll actually look, because we've got a formula where we're saying, you've managed to actually do it from January until June. And obviously, it's not happening for Wena. So we have to come up with an exit mechanism of saying, yes, but manage this much. We have contributed this much, but now because of lending, whatever, you've got money that is with you that you are unable to pay. What we do, we look at the amount that you brought in and the difference of the amount that you actually took. And we just say, if you are able to pay the 5,000 Rand, give us 1,000 Rand and you exit. And they are happy to do that because they know it's not every year that you are able to actually do that. Next year they come back again and they continue. So
now, obviously, we're talking money, and the beauty of Stokvel is that the power of one is multiplied. Andile, why can't Stokvels get bank loans? Because if people can see every month that we're able to save 10,000, 20,000, are the banks taking Stokvels seriously to say, look, these people can save regularly? We've seen, yes, at Christmas every year the money may disappear, as Mambusi says is wrong sometimes, but how are the banks assisting Ama Stokvel? Because it seems to me that Ama Stokvel are saving these huge amounts, but no one seems to be giving them recognition.
I think if I pick up on what Ustis Lindy is saying, you have to have your rules.
Yes.
If you don't have your rules, you're going to have problems. Even now, someone is trying to invite or start a new Stokvel, and it's very exciting. I want to join, but the problem is that there are no rules, and you can see what's going to happen. The moment something happens, and we have to make a decision, when we don't have rules, it's going to become a problem. If a Stokvel really wants to do something with a bank, it must be able to show that it's got rules. Call it a constitution. To say, Tina, this is the way that we work. We've been able to lend each other 5,000 at a time, and we've gotten it back. Please, now we're coming to the bank to say, make that 5,000, 20,000. And then be able to say, how can you show from this book that Nyani you can then operate? So some other models, the bank will require you to change your constitution or the way that you are working. But you can't just walk in and just say, I Tina, see Stokvel siyazana, and you want to then go and do business.
Now, Mambusi, during a break, we spoke about Stokvel, which has actually managed to show that it can save, and they managed to get a loan. Yeah. How did they manage to do this?
I mentored them through the co-op registration process. Okay. They did not stop doing their normal Stokvel activities, but because all of them were staying in an informal settlement area, they obviously wanted to upgrade their homes. So this funding institution said, yes, we will fund them on condition that we deal with them as one entity. No credit checks, because we're dealing with them as an entity. The loan was released, and they did a credit check amongst themselves in terms of affordability. You know, they would not give Ulindi Ilonia 20,000 if the assessment says Lindi can only afford to repay 5,000 rands. And I can say with confidence that Stokvel in particular, they're in Bloemfontein, they got a loan 150,000 rands. When we did the before and after, I was humbled to actually see 3 homes that had been upgraded using that money. And the repayment was, I think, was sitting at about 90% at that point in time. Unfortunately, there will always be those members who default, but group pressure will actually ensure that they pay back that money, maybe at a slower pace. So the most important thing, if the real Stokvels want to venture into serious lending money, is to formalize yourselves into an entity that can be recognized by a funding institution. Because the minimum that funding institutions I know can deal with the Stokvels without being registered. I mean, if you are 3 members in a Stokvel, remember, there's no legal requirement that says you have to be 10 in a Stokvel. You can be a Stokvel of 3 people, you know, and that's it. And if the 3 of you, they check you, and then, I mean, you are okay. I mean, you go through the normal credit checking process. Voila, you can access money, you know, whatever you need that money for.
Wow, that's awesome. Now, Mam Lindy, any last words to Ama Stokvel who have liked this discussion and are thinking maybe we should learn more about lending? How can they go about it? What are the first steps they should follow?
I think I always say to them, the first step is to make sure that you actually take Stokvel as a business. As Abu Endile said, it's about understanding your business. It's about understanding horna vision ya lona ke eng. The problem ya di Stokvel ke gore ba sheba on a short term. Ha ba shebelle ko pele gore what is that e re ka etsang ko pele. And with the situation here in South Africa, most of people have access to chelete ko bank. Stokvels can become another institution extended, and they can do much better.
So essentially, Ama Stokvels offer another way of accessing capital.
Yes.
Now, if there are any Stokvels out there which also loved this conversation and would like to know what are the tricks to make their bank account start working for them. Because remember, your bank account builds your credit worthiness. And Ama Stokvels are very credit worthy, but they haven't really tapped into that potential. How can they go about it?
We always advise members, once you've got your constitution, open a bank account. Do all of your transactions through your bank account. But now you automatically have that record to say, we are good savers. Then you can use that for the bank.
Okay, so any Stokvels that have been watching today, start taking your bank account very seriously. Keep it as a very accurate record of how you can save money, and also Demonstrate to your bank what happens to the money when it leaves, because when you do want to borrow money, they will ask you, this money which went out, what was it for? So record keeping is very important if you do want to access and leverage on the money in your Stokvel. Now let's get into this week's Stokvel fact sheet. This week, we look at some of our borrowing patterns and what seems to be preferred when it comes to institutions which we borrow money from. Let's take 3 scenarios. For households with an income between 6,000 and 14,000 Rand, if one is faced with unexpected expenditure, such as hospital bills, legal fees, or child extramural activity fees, where would one borrow 1,000 Rand? 7% say they'll get it from their credit card. 3% would approach a micro-lender, whilst 31% would borrow from a friend or relative. 8% would prefer the option to borrow from their Stokvel, and 50% would simply dig into their savings. Now, if that expense was increased to 5,000 Rand, it's astonishing that only 34% would be able to tap into their savings, whilst if that expense was increased to 10,000 Rand, only 8% would have enough savings to meet that obligation. In a nutshell, for 1,000 Rand, 42% of respondents need to borrow. For 5,000 Rand, the number increases to 52% of people needing to borrow. Whilst for 10,000 Rand, 57% of respondents would need to borrow money from a micro-lender, relative, or a Stokvel. Now, Andile, these are not huge amounts, and we're seeing that just for even 10,000 Rand, 57% of households cannot raise that money. They have to borrow. What does that say about South Africans and saving?
Savings, savings, savings. It's difficult to save, and as South Africans generally, we are not saving enough.
Okay, and Mambusi, I see the number also turning to Stokvels is increasing. Does this mean there are more Stokvels in the industry now?
Yes, I think Stokvels, I wouldn't say there are more Stokvels, but there's lots of Stokvels, in our communities. And Stokvels are a resource that people, easily turn to, when they need, money. But yes, key word is saving, so that you don't even rely on the Stokvel. For emergencies, save enough as an individual, have that discipline, so that you can have a saving reserve, more targeted.
Now, definitely. So what we are seeing is that Stokvels are indeed increasing as a source of additional funds, and Stokvels are indeed lending more money. Now, I'd like to thank our guests for this week. Mam Lindy and Mam Busi, thank you for joining us. And as usual, Andile, how do people get hold of Nasasa?
#Sonke. Follow the conversation.
Stay with us, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Stokvels Show.